Okay, now we're going to be multiplying matrices together. It's a little bit trickier than adding and subtracting. First thing you need to do is identify and label each matrix size, and you label them rows by column. So 2 rows, 1, 2, by 2 columns. Same with over here. And that's good. And what you're looking for is these two numbers need to be the same. If they're not, you can't multiply at all. If those two numbers are the same, then the size of the result, the product, will be the two outside. So in this case, a 2 by 2, which makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to make it kind of big because this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Okay, so you're taking the upper row and you're going to be multiplying with the left column. So this row, this column, so this is how it happens. Upper left times upper left. So 6 times 2 plus upper right times lower left. So upper right times lower left. And you're going to add those two things together. So 6 times 2 is 12 plus 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. And then you're going to add those two together. So it looks like negative 13. Okay, so now we're going to do the upper right. Okay, so I just erased some things. So we're still the upper, and now we're doing the right column. All right, and that, I should have done this in a different color. That's going to give us this value right there. So once again, we're going to multiply upper left and this time upper right. So that's negative 24 plus upper right times lower right plus 10. That gives us negative 14. Perfect. All right, you kind of get the idea. Now we're going to move to the lower rows. You're going to do the same thing. So lower left, so that's 6. And then negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. 31. And then 3 times negative 4, negative 12, plus negative 5 times 2, which is negative 10. And add those together, you get negative 22. Boom. And that's the matrix. That's matrix multiplication. Okay, let me find one that is not the same. Okay, let's come down to number 6. I'll do another couple probably with you, but all right, so first we have to identify. So 2 rows by 2 columns. So 2 by 2. And then this is 2 rows by 4 columns. So the two inside ones need to agree, and they do. If those two numbers didn't agree, then we couldn't multiply. It would be undefined. But the two outside numbers dictate the size, so it's going to be a 2 by 4. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing that we did before, but it's just going to be more of them, right? So we start up here, and we're going to repeat this with all 4 rows. So -1 times -1, so those two, and then those two. Those two, then those two. Those two, then those two. Those two multiply, then those two multiply. And then the result, you add those two together. So for this one, right here, we have -1 times -1 plus -4 times -1. So we have 1 subtract 4, that's -3, or 1 plus -4. Hold on just a second. I am wrong about that. That's a +4. Because that's -4 times -1. So this is 1 and this is 4. So +4. And I caught that. It's 5. And then we're going to go over to the second one. -1 times -6 is +6. And then -4 times -1 is +4. So that's 10. And then -1 times +4 is -4. And then -4 times -6 is +24. -4 plus 24 is 20. And then finally, -1 times -4 is 4. -4 times 6 is -24. Add those together and you get -20. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do that with the lower numbers, the lower row, to give us all the lower row numbers. So we start down here, and it's the same. Whoops, I should have done that in black. And then kind of get the idea. I'll erase all those arrows in a second. So -5 times -1 is 5, plus -3 times -1 is 3. Add those two together, you get 8. Okay, I'm going to switch to the red because we're doing the second column. So, whoops, -5 times -6 is 30. -3 times -1 is +3. Add those together, we get 33. All right. -5 times 4 is -20. -3 times -6 is +18. Add those together, you get -2. And then -5 times -4 is -20. -3 times 6 is -18. Add those together, you get -38. And this is the product. We multiplied two things together. When you multiply, the answer to a multiplication is the product. This is the product matrix. Okay, let's see if there's another one. Let me look at this. Oops. I apologize for that. be careful about making it too big. So this is a 3 by 2. This is a 2 by 2. The middle numbers agree. So the answer is going to be a 3 by 2. Now sometimes it's going to surprise you. So for example, you don't have to write this down. If we had, so X, Y, Z, A. This is a 1 by 4. B, C, D, E. This is a 4 rows by 1 column. So look at the middle numbers agree. And look at the answer is just going to be a 1 by 1. So this stuff can get weird looking. Okay. So we're going to do our 3 by 2. I'm going to make them hopefully long enough to do the addition. This times this. When you get to the middle row, it'll be this times this. And by the way, this times this. And this times this. And then this times this times this. So it's going to be doing something like that. So we have negative 5 times 5, which is negative 25, plus negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. When you add negative 5 and negative 18, I believe you get negative 43. But double check that, because I could be wrong. All right, now we're going to do upper right. So negative 5 times 5, which is negative 25, plus negative 3 times negative 1, plus 3. That gives us negative 22. Okay, now we can move to the lower ones, the middle ones. Okay, so negative 2 times 5, negative 10. 6 times 6 is positive 36. Add those two together, you get positive 26. And then we're going to do negative 2 times 5, which is negative 10. And then 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. Add those together, you get negative 16. Okay, now we're ready for the lower row. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. 4 times 6 is positive 24. Add those two together, you get positive 14. Then negative 2 times 5, negative 10. 4 times negative 1, negative 4. Add those two together, you get negative 14. And this is the final product. Let's see. This is a 4 by 2 columns. This is a 2 row by 3 columns. So notice we're going to have a 4 by 3. So 4 rows by 3 columns. And then you just have the And then we'll start back here at yellow again. Okay, and then each one of these, so you're going to multiply just like that. Okay, we'll do one more of those. So 5 times 5 is 5 plus 5 times negative 2, well, that's negative 10. So that is this is the end product right here. So that will be negative 5. All right, then we have 5 times 3, 15, plus 5 times negative 2. I caught the error. This first one should have been 5 times 4. That should have been positive 20. I'm sure some of you watching this said, what is she doing? Yep. All right. It is really easy to mess these up. You just saw how easy that was for me to mess that up. So just be careful. 5 times negative 2. This one is negative 10. They add to be positive 5. 5 times 0. And then 5 times negative 4. Add those two together, you get negative 20. All right, we're going to go down to the other row now. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. I'll be more careful. 4 times 4 is positive 16. Add those two together, you get negative 4. And then 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Add those together, positive 4. And then negative 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. 0 plus negative 16 is negative 16. Third row, 2 times 5 is 10. 4 times 4 is 16. We get 26. And then 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Add those two together, you get negative 2. And then 5 times 5 is 25. Oh, I started on the other row. I should still be here at 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. Okay, now we can jump down to the lower row. 5 times 5 is 25. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. Add those together, you get 21. 5 times 3 is 15. Negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. They add together to be 17. 5 times 0 is 0. Negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. Hopefully I didn't make errors that I didn't catch. It's very easy to make these errors. So maybe go a little bit slower than I was going. And one reason why it's easy to make errors, your eyes are kind of going all over the place. And then when you look back, it's just a sea of numbers. It's just easy to do. So just be as careful as you can with it. And good luck.